Locker Room, with all the sports news you need, live.
Good afternoon. It's Sunday afternoon. It's the Locker Room. Welcome. You're all welcome. I am Graham Duffy, your host for this afternoon. We are here until 5 o'clock to review all the games from this weekend in the Scottish Premiership. Delighted this afternoon to be joined by one of our now regulars, Alistair Blair. We'll try and skip over St Johnstone quite quickly. Alistair, how are you, mate?
Well, apart from the fact you just brought up St Johnstone already, I'm not too bad.
Unfortunately, we'll have to mention them at some point during the show. But yeah, get your comments.
Let's have an advert right now.
Get all your comments in. We are on Facebook, we are on Twitter, and we are on YouTube as well. We've got a lot to get through this afternoon. We will talk about the St Mirren Rangers game, which was finished a little while ago. We'll also keep an eye on Dundee against Celtic, which has just kicked off as well at 3 o'clock. We'll keep an eye on that score as well. But just a few shout-outs to mention before we move on. Very quickly, firstly, on Friday afternoon, Regan Stevenson and Mikey, our Hibs fan, did the show, and they did a fantastic job. That was Regan's first time hosting the show, and he was absolutely brilliant. So fair play to both Mikey and Regan. It was a really good show. I quite enjoyed it. The second shout-out, I will mention this again later on in the show, but on the 6th of May, which is a Monday, my wife's birthday, so I can't really forget that, there's going to be a special show between 7 o'clock and 8 o'clock to talk about the work that is done by the Scottish Football Supporters Association. Now, I think Michael will be hosting that, and I think, Alistair, you'll be on that show, I believe.
I think I will, yes. It should be interesting. Hopefully people will find out a bit more about us. Having said that, we've got 80-odd thousand members, so a lot of people already know a lot about us, but I'll keep my powder dry till next week, and hopefully a lot of people will actually not just watch the show, learn about what we do, learn about the kind of work we do across clubs, across football generally, both the national team and indeed also for football in general areas like disability, surveys on VAR. We've just done a huge survey on pyros. We'll talk about that next week, but hopefully a lot of people will come along and watch.
Absolutely. So get that date in your diary. It is the 6th of May. It is a Monday, and it will be on from 7 o'clock till 8. So that'll be a show to look out for. And the third and final shout out is to the women's teams, because yesterday Rangers beat Celtic women by 2-0 in the Scottish Cup semi-final to book their place in the final on the 26th of May. And this afternoon, my own team, Hearts women, they beat Spartans by 3-0. So it is a Rangers v Hearts final on the 26th of May, which should be a really good game of football, actually. And Eva Allard at Hearts has done a fantastic job this season, sitting comfortably fourth, now in a final. Fantastic job that Eva Allard has done. So looking forward to that game. It should be a decent game, and at least one of my teams can get to a final. But we'll skip over that. I'm not better about last week at all. So let's get into the football. Before we talk about the St Mirren Rangers game from this afternoon, Dundee are currently taking on Celtic. What are you thinking about this game, Alistair? Do you think this is a game that Celtic should win comfortably, or can Dundee spring an upset?
It's a game Celtic should win comfortably. I mean, that's exactly the right phrase, because they are a better team than Dundee. They're a better team than most teams in Scotland. Can Dundee spring a surprise? Well, they did against Rangers just the other day. They're playing at home on their now infamous pitch, and they're a good team. There is no getting away from it. Dundee in the top 6 on merit, and most St Johnstone fans would say that through gritted teeth, including me. But they are actually in with a chance. We'll see how it goes. My gut feel is that Celtic will win, because obviously, having seen Rangers just win, albeit narrowly, and you could make a case for St Mirren, drawing, but we'll come back to that later on. Yeah, I think Celtic should win this. Will they win it? Probably. Would I be surprised if Dundee sneaked a draw? Not really. I'd be surprised if Dundee won. But yeah, my money would be on Celtic.
I've been asked the question this last week by different folk. Who would be my manager of the year? Now, obviously, I'm going to be biased because I think Naismith has done a really good job. But if Tony Dockett was to get that, would you be surprised?
No, and I think it'd be well deserved. And obviously, he was at St Johnstone with Dale and was popular, and he's gone into management, a proper management job for the first time, and he's just done a fantastic job. And yes, you could be picky and look at it, as I'm sure some people will do, say, well, they've spent an awful lot of money they actually haven't got, to achieve what they've done. But so long as the club can actually make that up, I don't have a huge problem with that. Finance in Scottish football can be a bit rocky at times, as we know, but Dundee have actually spent wisely, brought in some really good players. I mean, really good players. And they've done everything that I would like St Johnstone to do, but have failed miserably. And if you're having an award for the least good manager of the year, then I can suggest somebody.
I mean, when a team comes up from the Championship, their main aim is stay in division. But Dundee have done that. They've not just done it, they've done it very comfortably. I mean, I don't think anyone, even realistic Dundee fans, could have thought at the start of the season they'd be finishing in the top 6. But they deserve to be there. They've had a fantastic season.
Yeah, and I think it'll be interesting next season when Dundee United are up, obviously, because there'll be at least one Tayside derby. I'm not sure if there'll be another, but you then actually got what most people would agree are more of the bigger clubs in Scottish football history in the top flight, which is a desirable thing. We could perhaps go off on a tangent and talk about the fact that maybe we should have other bigger clubs, Falkirk, people like that, Dunfermline in the top flight. That's a different argument around a bigger league. But Dundee have done all the right things. They've signed the right players. When they've played us, and I've seen them, live, they've been very, very good. And yeah, you can sort of pick holes in little bits and pieces as a Johnson fan. Maybe we should have at least got a draw in a couple of games. But the fact is, Dundee did to us what we used to do to other teams when Tommy Wright was in charge. They've gone there. They've been really solid. They've got some inspirational players. They've got good width. And they score goals and they defend well. So they deserve everything they get. And I hope there's not too many Saints fans watching this, otherwise I'll be sort of cut out of Facebook group. So
I did see earlier on that in the Celtic team sheet, they do have McGregor, Hatate and O'Reilly playing. I've long since thought that's the best midfield in Scotland. Would you go along with that?
Yes. Yeah, I think that's probably fair, and that's reflected in their league position. Riley's just a brilliant player. I mean, it'll be interesting to see whether Celtic can actually keep hold of all these players, because it's, in my view, in the last couple of years, Scottish football has become, it always was a place where the English clubs came and got players. Less so now because the top English clubs are going elsewhere and Scottish players at Scottish clubs simply aren't good enough. I mean, let's not beat about the bush. But there are one or two who could make it at the very top level. And I would not be surprised to see somebody come in for one of those three, but particularly O'Reilly, because they're just great players.
I've seen a lot of people mention O'Reilly maybe could go to Spain. Would that be a place you think he could actually be quite good there?
I think he could be quite good anywhere. I mean, if I was a footballer of that quality, where would I want to go? Well, I could think of worse places than Spain. Weather's an awful lot better than it is in Glasgow, with the greatest respect to all the people watching in Glasgow. Although it is sunny just now in Ayrshire, I can tell you. Spanish football, I mean, Scottish football is slightly different, partly because, people might not like this, but it's not at the same level. But if you're a good enough player, you can play anywhere. I think you can fit into anything. And, you see that with the good players coming to England in particular and fitting into their style. So, yeah, I would not be surprised if he went to England, if he went to Spain. I think if you're a Celtic fan, you're just going to have to accept that, I'm afraid. We have not got the money to hold on to these guys.
Yeah, that's very true. We're about 9 minutes in so far, and it's still Dundee 0, Celtic 0. We'll keep our eye on that and let you know what happens in that game. But there was a game earlier on today at lunchtime at the Schmeiser Stadium. It finished St Mirren 1, Rangers 2. Rangers took the lead through an own goal from James Bolton after 32 minutes. St Mirren did equalise through Mikkel Mandron's 11th goal of the season 4 minutes later. But Cyril Dessers, the much maligned Cyril Dessers, did manage to get another goal on the 74th minute to make it 2-1 to Rangers. But now I know it's about results. Rangers managed to get the result, but I've got to say, I thought St Mirren were lucky not to get something out of the game. I thought they were very good.
They were very good, and if it wasn't for Butland, I mean, we might come on to Mitov later on when we talk briefly for about 30 seconds about Saints, but Butland's save was just one of the best saves I've seen for a very, very long time. And the St Mirren players, they thought it was a goal. And I would have thought most people in the stadium thought it was a goal. It was the only other save I can think of, and I'm going to be very old and parochial here, was a save Alan Main made from James Grady, the game we qualified for Europe. And it's when the goalkeeper's actually going the wrong way and still manages to stretch a hand out while every muscle in his body is pushing in the opposite direction. Not only does he put his arm out, but he's then got enough strength in his hand to actually knock it up over the bar. It was a fabulous save. And St Mirren would have deserved to score. They were the better team for large parts of that game. They did there was just so many entertaining bits in that game. There was some poor defending, obviously, with the goals. There was Gogic's goal line clearance was just something else. Man, you watched it back, and he's actually, I think, the third St Mirren player from the goal line. He's the furthest back of the three of them who are running back, but he gets back on the goal line and manages to knock the shot away. It was just full of things like that. Yeah, St Mirren deserved a draw, in my opinion, and I don't think anybody could have complained if they'd got it, but Rangers did what Rangers and Celtic tend to do. They took advantage of a mistake, and it was a mistake. Dessers was left on his own, and got the 3 points. And even towards the end, though, I mean, St Mirren were still pressing, even the extra time, and could have got a draw. So I'd have said for the neutral that was actually quite a good game. I think if you're a Rangers fan, it was probably heart in the mouth stuff.
Yeah, I mean, that Butland save, it was a brilliant save, and it came at a big moment because it was 1-1 at that time. And if that goes in, St Mirren 2-1 ahead at half time, might be a different game.
Oh, no, if you're playing the Old Firm, you've got to actually go and take the game to them. In my view, if you sit back, if you're anybody apart from maybe Celtic, possibly Hearts on the day, but if you sit back and allow them onto you and try and keep it till 0-0 at half time, you know what's going to happen at some stage, either just before half time or after it. You're going to lose a goal and you're going to lose the game because you haven't got enough time to get back into it. Whereas if you spend 15 minutes, 10 minutes attacking and taking the game to the Old Firm, you're playing in their half. They're not troubling you. They might do a bit because they're obviously good, but that part of the game is gone, and of course that gets into their heads much more so, I think. So I think St Mirren did all that really, really well. And to be fair, Aberdeen did it as well the weekend before, in the cup game against Celtic.
I mean, I thought St Mirren started well. They had that chance in the first minute from Michael Mandron. They started well, and I think Rangers got control about maybe 25 minutes later. Yeah. But, I mean, the opening goal, it's disappointing for Zach Hemming, who is a really good goalkeeper. Yeah. But I think he's got to do better there. He flaps it. Fair play to Diomande. He keeps the ball in, and it's unfortunate for James Bolton. But Hemming's got to do better there. Yeah,
the thing is, it's dead easy being wise with hindsight, and it's like, yeah, of course, I'm a top-level goalkeeper, so I know exactly what to do. He is a top-level goalkeeper. He should have let it go out. But in the heat of the moment, I can understand he's probably aware there's a Rangers player behind him. He's probably got enough, awareness of that, and he doesn't want to take a chance, and he just gets it wrong. And you get it wrong. Another occasion, the Rangers player might have headed it back off the post or back off. It just so happened it broke. I thought that I'm not sure, was it Dessers, the Rangers player who was in with Bolton? I think it was. And yeah. I don't know if you saw on the television. He very, very cheekily sort of patted him on the cheek just as he went past, leaving a brown mark from the mud on his face. I don't think Bolton was very happy about that. But that's football. That's what happens,
I mean, fair play to St Mirren, because at that point they could have put the heads down, but they didn't. 4 minutes later, it's a great ball in from Mark O'Hara. I think it's a really good player. And Michael Mandron, it's a really, really good header because he's got a lot of force in that header. He's going back the way. It's a brilliant header.
Yeah, Dessers' header to win the game was actually a really simple header. It's the kind of header you think you or I might have managed to do, possibly. Well, maybe not with a lot of artificial drugs or something. But Mandron's header, not only does he does it's textbook, but he's got to generate the power himself. He puts it down at the corner. He's up against an absolutely sensationally good goalkeeper, and who actually got close to it, but couldn't keep it out. So yeah, it was a very, very good goal. And as I said earlier, I actually think that St Mirren probably deserves something out of that. But the fact is, Rangers and Celtic, and this time in the season in particular, if they don't win these games, then I'd think the pressure would be on Clement, because it was starting to become quite common knowledge, I think, now that his record is actually not much better than Beale's. In fact, it was identical. And I think the Rangers fans, I actually had a beer with a Rangers fan before our game yesterday. He's a mate of mine. And he was saying he thought the season had gone.
I mean, with 20 minutes to go, you could tell the Rangers fans were getting frustrated because there wasn't much in the second half. Lots of St Mirren competed really well. But then, of course, they get that goal again. And it's so unfortunate. Bolton just slips into Hemming and it leaves an empty net for Dessers. But listen, you've got to be there to score the goals, and Dessers was. But it's one of these unfortunate moments for James Bolton and Hemming.
Yeah, but again, that's the kind of things. I mean, goals. There's been lots of statistical analysis done over the years about goals, but goals tend to be scored by either brilliance or errors, and an awful lot of them are scored by errors, or it's players slipping over, or it's people giving away free kicks when they shouldn't, which okay is an avoidable error. But just a bit like the first goal. I mean, that's an error which as I said earlier, I think is understandable. I can understand why Hemmings felt he had to go for it, even though in retrospect he didn't. And it's the same with the second one. You know, these things happen. Unfortunately, that's, you know, somebody's got studs that are a millimetre too short, they slip, or whatever, or you're playing on a ploughed line at ends or whatever. So I come back to the point I've made several times. Rangers won, they deserved to win because they took their chance, but in the same way St Mirren deserved a draw in my view. And you're right, the early part wasn't great, but Rangers were not great, and the fans were getting a bit unhappy because obviously in those circumstances they will do. So I can entirely understand the relief that they had when they scored, but also their annoyance beforehand because their team were not playing well, and they haven't been playing well for quite a long time.
I suppose at this point in the season, there's only a few games to go. The main thing for Rangers and Celtic is just to get 3 points on the board. They've done it. Performance poll doesn't matter, but the main thing is they managed to get 3 points on the board.
Yeah, that, to be honest, that applies to any team that's actually, whether it's relegation or whether it's going for the championship or indeed going for the European places. It's always about getting 3 points on the board. I mean, nobody remembers all the rubbish games that were 1-0 where you fluked it in the last minute or whatever else. You just remember that actually at the end of the season you had, 60 points or 45 points or 23 points or whatever it is. And it actually comes down to, can you get over the line? And I was watching very briefly, going south of the border just before this, the Spurs Arsenal game. Spurs were a better team, and they're 3-0 down. So, and I don't know what it'll end up, but I'll be surprised if Arsenal don't score more and the Spurs don't get 1 or 2, because Spurs are looking pretty good, but I think Spurs are going to lose. So from that point of view, Arsenal are doing what they have to do. They are getting over the line, and they got to keep on winning. Otherwise, Manchester City will also keep on winning the league. Exactly the same up here. If Celtic win all their games, win the league. All Rangers can do is win their games, and that's what they're doing.
In terms of St Mirren, I want to pinpoint Alec Gogic because I thought he was outstanding today. You mentioned the goal line clearance, but overall, he's actually been probably one of St Mirren's best players this season. Anytime I've seen him, he's very strong. He's quite agile. He's good in the tackle. He's actually good on the ball as well. I thought today he was outstanding.
Yeah, he is a very good player. I would actually like to turn that back and ask you this, Graham. Do you think he's actually playing better now than he has at previous clubs like Hibs and places like that?
Yeah, I think he is. I think he looks before he was a midfielder. Now he's a centre back, and he's actually doing very well there. I think he's been excellent this season. Anytime we played against him, he's been phenomenal. And it was shown during the game as well. Like the run back that he makes, he must have lapped about 5 of his own teammates to make that challenge in the end. It's phenomenal. I mean, it really was outstanding today.
He was, and again, the point you made. I mean, I've seen him play against us. Now we've actually been turned over really badly twice at Paisley, and we sneaked to win at Perth, which was quite glad of. But that's by the by. But we did sneak it because they gave away an incredibly stupid penalty in the last nanoseconds. I think players like that who move back, and they can obviously see the game in front of them, but because they've got that midfield player's sort of ability to read the game and move with the game, you can just see that he actually fits in really well. And I agree with what you said. I think he's playing probably the best football that we've seen him play in Scotland. So St Mirren have got him at the right time, and they've done that with a few players, they've taken on board. I mean, if you speak to St Johnstone fans about Scott Tanser, most of them will not be all that wildly enthusiastic about him when he was at Perth. I remember seeing him make it, I think it might have been his debut, his second game against Partick Thistle, and the general feeling was that he was skillful going forward. He could pass the ball fairly well, he could cross the ball really well, but he was a bit chicken. Didn't see that today. I mean, he absolutely put in a really meaty challenge earlier on in the game. I actually texted a mate of mine, who's another Saints fan, and said, I've just seen Tanser do this, and he sent me a text back going, he must have slipped. So that kind of tells you the sort of St Johnstone fans approach. But there's a player who's gone to St Mirren and actually again improved. And Robinson deserves a lot of credit for the way he's got that team going. That's 2 years now in a row, which they hadn't done for goodness knows, in that position in the league. And if you looking ahead to next season, you're looking at top six. St Mirren will be probably one of the clubs which you might expect to possibly be there or thereabouts, depending on how Dundee United do.
I mean, supporters like the kind of flashy type players, they like the creative players, they like the goal scorers. But a guy like Gogic, he's just all action. He's full of energy. Like I said, defensively, he was brilliant today. The amount of blocks he made. That's the kind of players that I quite like. Guys that just, if they can give everything. These flashy players might have 1 or 2 moments in games where they look really good, but guys like Gogic for 90 minutes are outstanding.
I think fans, because let's be honest, fans, the one thing, there's only a couple of things I think which fans don't like. They don't like cheating. Let's not call it any other than cheating, i.e. diving, etc. They absolutely hate players spitting on each other, and they can't stand that players that don't give 100%. And I know that's one of the biggest cliches in football, but fans can see if somebody's not at it, but they can also see if somebody just doesn't seem to be up for the fight. And Gogic is the other end of that spectrum. And again, so I'm going to sound like I'm obviously talking from my own experience here, but if I go back to Tommy's team in the back four there with Dave Mackay and Brian Easton at full back, you'd see them making goal line clearances and high-fiving each other. And if you speak to Stephen Anderson, for example, right, who scored the first goal in the Cup final in 2014, as I have done many times, he's more pleased about the fact that they had a clean sheet, almost than the fact that he scored. And it's that mentality which people like Gogic have. And if you haven't got those people in your team, you're not going to do much. But that's really, I think, the one thing that St Mirren have got. They've got that pride in their performance, all the things which footballers should have, and all the things which, when we come on to the 30 seconds of the St Johnstone Hibs game, I will tell you that we don't have.
It's funny because I look at a guy like Gogic who cost peanuts for St Mirren, and then I look at a guy on the other side like Fabio Silva who cost Wolves 35 million, and I've yet to see him do anything in a Rangers shirt.
I kind of wonder if he's got a twin brother that Wolves thought they were buying. I mean, he got roundly booed when he was taken off. He got roundly booed when he clashed with Gogic, in fact, because people felt he was diving. I actually think that's a bit unfair. He didn't throw himself to the ground in the spectacular fashion that we saw the other day, which was up there with the most embarrassing moments in Scottish football this year. And he had, did he have much impact on the game? Not really, no. I agree with you. He's not, if you're a Rangers fan, you look at him going, yeah, we want him in the team every week. Probably not. Probably not. Would you want him at Hearts?
No, absolutely not.
Oh.
I think it shows, like I said, I keep going back to the thing about showing flashes, but it's not enough. You've got to do it for 90 minutes, and I don't think I've ever seen him play 90 minutes yet.
No, and particularly if you're a striker, or somebody who's expected to be in the forward part of the park and actually contributing in that sense. Rangers have got other players who do more than that. And Dessers, who's maligned massively by loads of people, has now scored 20 goals, I think. If you start the season with a striker who you know is going to score you 20 goals, you're not good. And let's go away from the Old Firm now. If you're at any other club and you've got a 20-goal striker, like Hearts do, you're going to be in the top half of the table. You absolutely do, so long as your defence isn't absolutely full of Mickey Mouse, wannabes who couldn't tackle a fish supper. So that makes an enormous difference. And again, I think if you look at all the clubs, I mean, we'll come on to people like Bruce Anderson, who I think scored 9 or 10 goals, who I think is actually not a bad striker. That's the difference possibly in a club maybe that's 2/3 way up the table between 1 or 2 positions further up the league. Somebody who gets you into double figures in goals. And we're going away from Silva now. Silva's not that player. Simple as that.
I mean, Rangers are now level on points with Celtic, but Celtic obviously are playing just now against Dundee. Now, assuming that if Celtic win that game, they go 3 points clear. Celtic then play next Saturday against Hearts at Celtic Park. Hearts have already gone on 1. They would then, if they win that, be 6 points clear before Rangers play on Sunday next week against Kilmarnock. Now, everyone's talking about this game at Celtic Park in a couple of weeks, but Celtic have got a hard game against Hearts next week. We've beaten them already, and Rangers have got to play Killie, which is not going to be easy. So I still think there could be twists and turns in this title race.
I think you're right. I mean, we'll obviously talk about your team's trip to Rugby Park, and Kilmarnock are a very, very good team. I mean, you're talking about manager of the year. You could make a case for Dell as well. You can make a case for both of them. I can guarantee you it will be neither of them. It will be whoever wins the league. It'll be one of the Celtic or Rangers, because, sorry, at the risk of sounding bitter, you can win 2 trophies in a season and you still don't get manager of the season, because Rangers have won the league. It's that's the way it works. So, yeah, people like Dale should be on the shout. Rangers going to Kilmarnock. Sorry, I'm getting myself tied in knots here. Rangers going to Kilmarnock is a difficult game, and I would not be surprised if they drop points there. More so almost than St Mirren today, because I think
that game's at Ibrox.
Ibrox. Oh, sorry, I beg your pardon. In that case, I've got that wrong. This is just old age and senility, I'm afraid, Graham. It's what happens when you get to my age. I still think, even though it's at Ibrox, that Kilmarnock will give them a good game, because Kilmarnock are a very good team. And I still wouldn't be surprised if they took a point off them. Yeah, they'd have more chance at Rugby Park. But that could actually, going back to your question almost, that could actually be a league decider. I really think that. Celtic against Hearts, well, you tell me, you're the Hearts fan.
I mean, I didn't expect us to beat Celtic at Celtic Park earlier on in the season. We managed to go on and win. Now, we could do it again. We've already beat them at Tynecastle. Could that happen again? It could. But, I mean, to be fair, Hearts are actually playing quite well. We'll get on to the Kilmarnock game in a minute, but I actually thought Hearts played well yesterday. And an away form's been very impressive this season. So we could actually go to Celtic Park and cause a problem next week.
Yeah, you could. A lot will depend on, it goes back to what we were saying earlier on. You know, you're talking about the old firm getting across the line, and that's all they're looking to do. It doesn't really matter. I mean, I've not got the Dundee game on in the background. I don't know if it's still 0-0 or not, is it? Or...
It's still 0-0, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, from that perspective, yes, you could. I mean, Saints beat Celtic 3 times going back to the days of Nick Dazovic, and probably cost Celtic the league that year. If you beat them 3 times, you could cost them the league this year, and that's a possibility. Bizarrely, I think there's more chance. Having seen Rangers today and seen highlights of some of the previous games, I think Kilmarnock have got more chance of taking something than probably Hearts do. Sorry.
Yeah, that's probably fair. That's probably fair.
Yeah, but I also think that this will. I mean, every cliche in the book comes out this time of the season, the sort of twists and turns, all that kind of stuff. You've got Celtic at Dens today, which is not an easy game. It's 0-0 just now. If Celtic were to draw that, then again, the psychology of it changes. I don't think they will. I think they'll get across the line. So, again, as usual, a very long-winded answer, and usually involving several grounds at which teams aren't actually playing. But I think Kilmarnock have got more chance of beating or taking a point from Rangers than Hearts do from Celtic.
Just before we wrap up that game, let's just touch on St Mirren. They are sitting 5th. They've had a fantastic season. You mentioned managers of the year. You could pick quite a few of them in that top 6, to be honest. But again, the job that Robertson's done has been absolutely fantastic this season. Yeah,
and I think my seat at McDermott is just behind the away dugouts, just in front of the VAR screen, unfortunately, which means we should go in and plug it before the game starts. And the 3 managers I've seen in particular who actually impressed me in the dugout are Robinson, Tony Docherty. Dale, to be fair, actually would be another one. I would go along with that as well. And in fact, your guy as well. I think Naismith, I can't use the language he was using, obviously, because we're on a show, but basically he was suggesting the Hearts players, put a bit more effort in, shall we say. Got the ball up the park a bit quicker and were basically performing a bit better. And I like to see that. I mean, Robinson is like his Duracell bunny. He's constantly involved in the game. Stuart Kettlewell's a bit like that as well, but in a different way. So none of these things surprise me. And I actually think, again, for managers of clubs out with the old firm, or for clubs out with the old firm, if you've got that kind of manager who clearly demonstrates passion, the fans react to that as well. And that actually creates a sense of this guy cares about the club. And when we get on to the 30 seconds about Saints, we'll have a conversation about that, because I think that's something which most Saints fans don't think is the case with Craig Levein. So, yeah, Robinson is got that intrinsic passion, and it's manifest during the game because he absolutely wants his team to win. He's shouting at them, encouraging them, cajoling them, going nuts with the fourth official, all the kind of things you want to see your manager doing in the right kind of way. And yes, he gets a hard time from opposition fans, but it's because he cares. So I would agree with you. You could choose a lot of managers this season. However, as I've said, it'll go to one of the old firm, whoever wins the league.
So that was the game from lunchtime today. St Mirren 1, Rangers 2. Let's look back at the games from yesterday, and let's start at the Tony Macaroni, the game between the bottom two, which was won by Livingston to keep themselves in with a chance of staying up. I think it's done, to be honest. But Livingston 2, Ross County 0. Bruce Anderson with the goal on the 12th minute and a Sean Kelly penalty on 53 minutes. And it just goes to show the wonderful world of football, because it wasn't that long ago that Ross County managed to beat Rangers, but yesterday they got beat by the bottom side Livingston. That's why I love football. But it's a brilliant result for Livingston. I think it is probably done, but it's a massive result for them.
It is, and you're comment about that's why I love football. I remember many, many, many years ago when we got beat by Stranraer in whatever it was then called Challenge Cup final. One goal from Danny Griffin, if anybody's interested, which Danny still gets embarrassed about to this day. But I think we'd beaten Rangers or Celtic or something like that round about that time, and an off the ball Tam Cowan made the point that based on the average football fan's logic, that means that Stranraer should beat Rangers or whoever it was we'd beaten. So yes, you're right. I obviously have a vested interest in this game, because at halftime, as the teams were trooping off McDermott Park with the St Johnstone team being roundly booed, I asked Gordon, who sits next to me, if he knew what the score was, expecting Ross County to be winning, to be honest. And was pleasantly surprised when we discovered that Livingston were winning 1-0. And then I didn't know the score for the rest of the game, mainly because I was so preoccupied in my own misery. And then towards the end of it, I said to Gordon and Ian, the guys who sit next to me, any idea what the Livy score is? And the girl who sits in front of me went, it's 2-0. And this is with about 15 minutes to go. That was the only moment of enjoyment I had yesterday afternoon. So that's not really telling you much about the game. But I'd met a friend of mine who's a retired journalist, a sports journalist, before the Saints game, and he said, I wouldn't be surprised if Livy do us a turn today. They're going to beat somebody in this last 5 games. Like you said, I think they're down. But that was almost the old Livingston. That was really what you used to get from Livingston. Ross County, how they can go from beating Rangers to losing to Livy, I don't know. Somebody made a very good point on the radio. I'm not sure who it was. I can't believe it was one of the BBC pundits, because they normally talk absolute rubbish. But it was that when Ross County were playing Rangers obviously open up against them. The Rangers expect to score. It's a much more open game, much more expansive game. That created gaps and avenues for Ross County to exploit. Playing against Livingston's like playing against a brick wall, with howitzers being launched at you from time to time, either from throw-ins or long balls or corner kicks or whatever. And then, one of the giant centre-halves comes up and heads it in, and then you're 1-0 down. So that made it much harder, I think, for Ross County, because they are probably, on their day, they're probably a better team just now than St Johnstone. To be fair, St Johnstone reserves are probably a better team than St Johnstone just now. But, that worries me as a Saints fan, because I look at that and I think, well, Ross County have got 3 games at home where they're strong. If they reach their peak level of performance, there's a good chance they'll win at least 1 or 2 of those. They're obviously playing us at Perth. Livingston, could they? Surely they couldn't. It's not going to happen. So Did they deserve it yesterday? Yes, they did. Bruce Anderson's a player I've actually always thought would be quite good at Saints, but I don't. We probably couldn't have. Well, if Livy could afford him, we probably could afford him as well. He's obviously going. He's obviously got a club lined up. I'm quite sure it's not us. I suspect somebody in the lower reaches of the Premier might be in for him. I don't know. I don't know what you think, but I mean, basically, Livingston deserved that yesterday, and fair play to them. They're still going to go down. It's made it more interesting because if Ross County had won that, the way things are at Perth just now, that it almost could have been good night Vienna, because the mood in the Perth players, the lack of fight is so appalling just now that you can just see the heads going further down.
There has been a goal at Dens Park, and it has come for Celtic, probably no surprise, after 30 minutes, and it's James Forrest that's got the goal. So Celtic 1-0 up there after half an hour. But I mean, just watching the highlights last night, I think Livingston did deserve to win. Fair play to Bruce Anderson. He latches on a mistake from Ross County's defence. I think County made a few mistakes yesterday. And I think in terms of the handball as well, again, is there any real complaints about Michi Effetti's handball? Because again, I keep talking about it consistently. I think it is probably a handball, but that next week might not be given.
Yeah, you know what? I think it's one of these ones where you look at it and you think he actually does probably slightly move his arm towards the ball. Whether the referee clocked that or not, I don't know. I think the referee gave it on the grounds of the law as it stands just now, which is basically if it goes anywhere near your hand, it's a penalty. So the fact that you could see on the playback that he did appear to move his arm. Now, I think, again, somebody said on the television last night in the highlights that it's almost an instinctive thing. Well, you kind of hope it'd be an instinctive thing to move your arm in the opposite direction. You know, I mean, that kind of seems to make more sense to me. I think it was Neil McCann who said it, so that probably explains it. But it was very much the case that I couldn't see it being anything other than a penalty. And there's been other instances at the weekend, including in that game, where you might say, yes, there should have been a penalty, no, there shouldn't, or whatever else. But that one, I think, yeah, under the laws as they are just now, that's a penalty. Should it be? If it's deliberate, as I think it was, then yes, it should. If it had just hit his arm and there was no indication he moved it, then the sooner we get that law changed, the better. It is absolute nonsense. I'm going off a wee tangent here because I'm sure we'll talk about VAR later on. I actually had a look at the laws and I had a look at the amendments. Now, there's a page of amendments between last year and this year, a whole page of them that apply to a number of different laws. There is not a hope that the players or the fans can keep up with this stuff. We've got a really simple game with 17 laws, which by and large have changed over the years. It's not been constant, but they've changed very, very slowly. And there's a good reason for that. It's because it basically ruins the game when you start messing around with them, which is exactly what we're seeing now with the handball. It is just a joke. And it's absolutely the Swedish thing, which hopefully we'll have time to talk about later on, actually, Graham. That gives me almost some hope that we could do something about this. And if I can I give you an exclusive?
You can indeed. Always like an exclusive on this show.
Okay, here's an exclusive, right. Over the tail end of last week and over the weekend, I've been exchanging notes with the other board members on the Scottish Football Supporters Association. We think that the SF, well, we can't demand because obviously, we're not in a position to do that, but we think there should be an absolutely independent review involving the SFA and all other interested parties, which includes the referees, but most of all the fans, because they're the single biggest stakeholders in the game, of the way VAR operates in Scotland. And there should be a democratic outcome of that, so that if it's the case that the fans say, as they've done in Sweden, look, we've just had it up to here with it, get rid of it, that's what happens. If they say, no, we'd rather keep it and we'd like to see it developed, maybe change it a little bit, again, that's absolutely fine. But we're actually talking to people who really matter. So we're going to launch that next week. I can guarantee you the SFA will pay no attention to it whatsoever. But I can also guarantee you that we're going to share this widely, and I would encourage anybody who's watching this to share it in their fans groups. You'll find it on the SFSA website, scottishfsa.org. There's a blog article which I've written to sort of get the thing going. And let's get that out there to as many fans as possible, because I do not know many. I know some, but I don't know many fans who actually think that VAR's doing anything other than ruining our game.
Interesting. Might actually come back to this later on in the show. So let's. Paul Donaldson, our Aberdeen fan, resident Aberdeen fan. Hi, I hope you've had a good weekend. Heard you talk about Bruce Anderson. Derek McInnes has signed a few ex-Aberdeen players. Wouldn't be a shock if we went to Kilmarnock. That's probably not a bad shout, to be honest, because Van Veen will leave. Vassell potentially could leave, so it might not be a bad option, that, actually. But, I mean, just looking at the game yesterday, I mean, you touched on it there where you said that was like the old Livingston. Now, Livingston against Hearts, we did the show the Sunday after we beat Livingston 4-2. I thought they played really well that day, but the defensively were really poor. But yesterday, they've managed to do something they've not done for a long time, which is keep a clean sheet.
Yeah. I mean, the game at Hearts, when they were 2-0 up, if I remember correctly, and in the past, they might have won 2-1, but as you say, now they don't have the wherewithal to do that. And obviously, financially, I think they're not really in the most robust health. A lot of clubs are maybe not as robust as they would like to be from that point of view. But yesterday they had a clean sheet. I don't know. That's their fourth win this season.
It is, yeah.
Which is one more than we've had under Craig Levine. This is going to become a running. So, by the way, I also like Paul's comment about hope you've had a good weekend. He's obviously not been listening to what I've been saying so far. I think that would be a good shout. Derek McInnes is good at spotting players. If you speak to Saints fans, you talk about the 2014 Cup final win. 5 of those players were signed by Dell. So he has got a track record. Matt Kennedy obviously was at Saints, and he didn't really set the heather on fire at Aberdeen, but he's actually an integral part of that Kilmarnock team now. And he's doing all the things that he's really good at. He's never going to score lots of goals. He's going to cut in and he's going to hit the bar about 3 times a season because that's what he does. But he's also going to make a lot of goals and score a few, and he's a really good player. So I think that's quite a good shout. Anderson, to Killie, because you're correct. Some of the Killie players will move on because they're good players.
It is very rare that I hear kind of players getting mentioned by name after the game, but David Martindale did basically say that Bruce Anderson will probably leave. And I think even Bruce Anderson said himself after the game as well that he will definitely go. I think he's done a decent job for Livingston. Maybe hasn't played a lot of football, but to be fair, in the absence of Tete Yenge, who was suspended, he did well yesterday.
He did, and it's no surprise because he knows they're going to get relegated. He wants to play at the top level. Footballers do that. I mean, again, sort of historian's hat on, as it were. We were playing Motherwell last game of the season. I remember getting relegated at Motherwell quite a long time ago under Paul Sturrock. And, you look at that game, and I remember we won. We had to win and hope results went our way. We won 1-0. And I remember Billy Dodds was playing for us at the time. And, the end of the game, normally there's a cheer from the fans of the team that's won. And Dodds looked up at the Saints fans, obviously hoping for a cheer that indicated the results had gone our way. And there wasn't. And you could just tell from his expression. Now, I don't know if it was Billy Dodds, but I do know that at least one, if not 2 Saints players from that squad very soon after that defeat said, right, that's it, I'm off. So players vote with their feet. It's if you're working for a company and it's going bust or going backwards, you're on the phone to the headhunter, or you're, scouring the internet looking for a new job. It's quite a natural thing to do. So don't blame him. Martindale's very honest from that point of view. And I think that Anderson will be a real asset to whoever he goes to, because I think he can score goals. I think he can probably score 10. In a good team, he might score a dozen or more. He's scoring, 9 or 10 with Livingston, who are not a good team. So what can he do in a team with more support around him?
On the Friday show with Reagan and Mikey, one of them, maybe both, can't remember, was predicting Livingston could beat Ross County. That was a good shout. I think it was Mikey because he was actually going to the game. So it was probably him that actually said that. But I mean, in terms of Livingston, they are basically 10 points from safety, 4 games to go. They know they are going down. It's a big win yesterday. But for Ross County, I mean, their season's just been really up and down. They've gone from obviously beating Rangers to losing to Livingston. I mean, listen, it is obviously between yourselves and St Johnstone, yourselves and Ross County for that kind of playoff place. I mean, I genuinely now can't call this because both St Johnstone and Ross County are having very difficult seasons. It's very difficult. It's very. I don't want to be obstinate. It's very difficult to call this just now.
I tell you one thing. I mean, you obviously are not as privileged as I am for your sins or whatever to actually watch St Johnstone these days. If we go at the playoff, I think we'll lose it. If Ross County go at the playoff, I think they'll win it. I think that's the difference. Ross County must have had a rubbish season because they're below us. And this is the worst St Johnstone team I've seen for a long, long time. Bear in mind, I've seen a lot of very good teams over the last decade and more, in fact. So Ross County, as I said earlier on, have got more about them. When they play at their peak, I think they're a better team than us, but they don't seem capable of doing that. And yes, everybody raises their game against the Old Firm. That absolutely happens. And they did it in spades and were really successful, and good luck to them, although I was cursing it at the time. Can you decide how this is going to go? They've got 3 home games, we've got 3 away, one of which actually we're playing Aberdeen 3 times away. And again, that's one of these stupid anomalies in the system we've got, which is unfair, but you know the rules before you go into it, so there's no point complaining. But it is unfair, you know. Aberdeen are virtually safe now, I think. So from that perspective, we've got Aberdeen next away. I think I'll be amazed if we take anything from that. Ross County, I think I've got Hibs.
They do it, yeah, and Dingwall, yeah.
Dingwall. Well, I mean, Hibs, they can wear the same strips they wore yesterday because there's no sweat on them, you know. And they'll get a harder game from Ross County, but Hibs can be a very good team if they play well. But again, they're a bit like Ross County. The reason they're in the bottom 6 is because they're not consistent enough. They're hot and cold. Ross County are more cold than hot, which is why they're where they are. But I do think, and I'm not normally particularly pessimistic about Saints, and I've watched them long enough to see us going up and down quite a few times. But the difference between the attitude of the Ross County players and the attitude of the St Johnstone players that I'm seeing is marked. So unless there is some major sea change, which we'll talk about in what's probably going to be half an hour, I talk about the Saints game. It's going up from 30 seconds. I think we are banging it. I really do.
Well, that was Livingston 2, Ross County 0. Like I said, Livingston are definitely going down, but it's a big win for them yesterday. Let's move on to St Johnstone against Hibs. Let's get it out of the way. St Johnstone 1, Hibernian 3. Marcondes after 6 minutes, a brilliant free kick. Paul Hanlon after 44 and Dylan Vent after 76. Kim Pioka did get a goal back for St Johnstone in 8 to 9 minutes. But having watched the highlights yesterday, Hibs could have won that by 8 or 9. I said it before we came on air. I thought Mitov was outstanding. So I'm going to give this over to Alistair because obviously you are not a happy man after yesterday.
No, I'm not happy, man. You can tell. I mean, I don't look at. So I'm going to go a wee tangent as I tend to do. You know, when you're on Facebook, and Facebook says you're a Hearts supporter, you might like to follow the Hibs page. No, I wouldn't. Right? So you've got the club official Facebook page. It's got an interview with Craig Levine. It's got comments underneath it. Let me give you one guess as to how many of those were favourable out of about 70 odd when I looked at it yesterday.
2.
That's too many. The previous game at McDermott, we won 1-0. Hibs weren't good. We were okay. We obviously got a goal. We were reasonably resolute in defence. We've got, I've mentioned this on this show before, we've got a defence that is creaky and aged. Andy Constantine has been, apart from being a really nice guy, has actually been a top level footballer, but he's 37, you know. Liam Gordon is a St Johnstone diehard, you know, born and bred fan, run through the brick wall, etc. But without a really quality player like Jason Kerr alongside him, he's really not quite up to this level. Ryan McGowan, again, like Constantine, been a great player in the past. You've obviously seen that. but he made some amazing clearances. He made one in particular where, again, how they didn't score, I don't know. I would take issue with you saying they could have scored 8 or 9. I've said 6 or 7. But it's a matter of degree. If we did not have Mitov, we would probably be in the same position as Livingston. That's an exaggeration, but Mitov is, and I think he could play for the Old Firm quite comfortably if Rangers are looking for a replacement. I don't think they would go for him, but I cannot see anything about him that's he's as good in my view as any other goalkeeper in Scotland just now. I don't know what your thoughts are, Graham, but as to the game, give away a needless free kick. It's miles out, and what you're thinking beforehand, this is going to take a really good free kick. Now, Mitov is a really good goalkeeper, as I've just said. Nobody would have got near that. Nobody. It was a superb bit of skill. He had a free kick later on, right on the edge of the penalty box, which fortunately didn't go in. But at the time, we were all thinking, this is not going to be good. I actually thought we might lose 3-0 yesterday before the game. The lack of fight, the lack of organisation, a manager that stands on the touchline and does nothing. A manager that is not, as far as the fans can see, invested in the club. The fans, as again, looking at social media is not necessarily reflective of all fans, but the mood amongst St Johnstone fans is they have had enough now and they would like Craig Levein to leave. Will that happen? I would doubt it very much. But I think he'll take us down. I don't think he's bothered about Saints. He's got a 3-year contract. Why have we given him a 3-year contract? That's beyond me. Has he made any players better? No. Apart from yesterday, he hadn't played Graham Carey. He hadn't started Graham Carey for a few games. Carey is the most skillful player we've got by a country mile. And he's not starting him. He's starting Kucheravi, who, to be fair, didn't play yesterday. Partly because he's the guy who brought Kucheravi to Scotland. I can't use the expression that Saints fans use in relation to that, but you probably get my drift. He's got Dan Phillips, who's made it clear he's leaving at the end of the season, who is a little pocket battleship, but has not scored a goal in 50 games. Now, I don't know about you, but I quite like midfielders that score at least 1 goal a season.
Yeah.
And that's not good enough. I would rather have Connor Smith, who came on towards the end and looked a bit more like it. Sidibe got injured early on, which didn't help. He's playing Nicky Clark outside his natural position, which is as a goal-scoring striker. How long have we got on this, by the way? We finish about 7.
Plenty of time.
There is no width to the team. The defence is carved open. Hibs could easily have scored and probably should have scored 5. Being realistic, the goalkeepers will make some saves, but they could have scored 5 if it wasn't for Mitov. His save in the first half to knock the ball on the bar, which is probably about half a degree of deflection to hit the bar as opposed to going in the net. It was just unbelievable. I genuinely think we are banging it. Nobody knows what's happening about the sale. There's an awful lot of rumours. There's all the usual conspiracy theories doing the streets of Perth, which get reported back about, one of the players said to the hairdresser, he's saying a haircut by that, etc., etc., etc. It's just not a happy camp. One thing I do know, and this is something obviously in the back of the fact, as you know, I'm club historian, so I've got quite a lot of contact and information, which maybe other people don't have. I think most fans are aware that the club has been very badly managed for quite a few years now. For a long time, people talked about how well run St Johnstone were, but actually the media knew behind the scenes that wasn't really the case. And that these chickens are now coming home to roost. That is why we are where we are. And if we go down, which I would have thought is more likely than not now, we are going to struggle to come back.
I mean, it was noticeable yesterday. This gets pouted about Levein a lot. He's a very defensive manager, and he is, and he certainly can be. But it looked very easy for Hibs to cut through that St Johnstone team yesterday. I mean, I only managed to see the highlights on Sportscene, but it looked very easy to cut through that St Johnstone team.
Yeah. I mean, they absolutely got it right, Hibs. I mean, Hibs did what they had to do. They scored early on. Okay, Sidibe actually had a very good chance, which he probably should have scored if he'd scored different game, but he didn't. He had another chance, which was more of a half chance, which wasn't shown on the telly. But Hibs had other things which weren't shown. They had free kicks and things which nothing came of them, so we didn't see them on the television highlights. We were carved apart because Hibs knew in the second half that at 2-0 up, we're going to have to come out. And they picked us off. They did it brilliantly. And they've got some real paces, up front. They really can motor. And it was only by desperate defending that we actually managed to hang on. So Levine isn't even getting that bit right. Ironically, we've given the boy McClelland, who Mackett had brought in, the centre-back, to Dundee United, where he's doing such a good job. The United fans want him to sign a contract. Fortunately, he's got another year in a contract with us. So we've not even got players in who look like they could do a good job. We've got, this is going to sound terrible, and I hope he's not watching. I think it's highly unlikely he is, but Cammy McPherson, right? One of my big mates, a guy called Stuart McKinnon, who's actually my accountant. He's got 3 sons. They're all diehard Saints fans. I got back to where we parked the cars. Callum, who's his second son, is in the car already. I said, "Did you leave early?" He said, "Yeah." He said, "The moment Cammy McPherson came on, I was off." So there are some players who have that effect on fans. I feel sorry for McPherson because he was signed after we got rid of Ali McCann when we didn't need to. And he was signed at about a nanosecond to midnight. The guys who were running Saints comms at that time then committed the gross error of putting out a tweet saying, "We are absolutely delighted that we've signed Cammy McPherson. We just got rid of actually the best player we've had for years, but don't worry, we've signed a guy that St Mirren don't want." And I was told by Tommy Wright, every other club was being offered him at that time. So we just had to get him because we had to have somebody. So when I'm talking about some mismanagement, this is actually the reality of what's happening or what has happened. He's an okay player. He's not going to be first choice in a good St Johnstone team in a month of Sundays. So all these things are conspiring. I did say 30 seconds. I probably overstayed my welcome, but Hibs were good. Hibs scored. When they had chances, they took them. They were so comfortable. They didn't really need to work very hard for it. We played the young boy, Fran Franchik. He's our youngest ever player. He's 16 still. He's about 5'6". He's not a big guy, but he's really stocky. We play him up against a huge winger. He's playing right back. He's a forward player. He's a midfield forward player. Levine puts him at right wing back. He gets absolutely taken to bits by the guys up against because he's much bigger, stronger, older, fitter, faster, etc., etc., etc. You can see when Franjak's on the ball that he's got a bit about him, that he might become a good player. But he should never have been playing in that team. Not in a month of Sundays. One of the few straws of comfort, apart from the score at Livingston, was that Dre Wright came back. And he's been out for a long time injured. He's had a career plagued by injuries, but he's provided you some attacking threat down the right. So does that make me feel any more confident? Not really. The best way you can, for most Saints fans just now watching us, it's a bit like the word that's used most commonly is the word that probably ties in with what you find in the bottom of a budgie's cage. and it's not grit, right? It's profoundly depressing. And, your own team, I'll shut up in a minute or two. You tell me what you think. But I mean, most of us have had times when our teams are actually on the way down. It's probably harder if you're a big club. And by that, I mean a sort of, Hearts, Hibs, who've had a hard time. Aberdeen have only avoided relegation occasionally in the last wee while, by the grace of God, almost. It must be much harder because you're so used to it. But we've had such a period of success that for a lot of Saints fans, this is really hard to bear. And for the older ones who can look back, they're going, well, actually, no, this is a rubbish team. This is a badly organised, badly managed team. The manager doesn't seem to actually care. And the whole mood about the place is despondent, I'm afraid.
Yeah, well, we've had the 2 allegations, 2014 because of Romanov and the 15-point deduction we had to play with kids, and in that 2020 COVID season, and it's not great. I mean, I'm glad we came up first time I've asking both times, but it's not a great thing. And I think there were times, especially during the COVID season, 3-1, And we played well, and I thought we might actually stay up here. And then obviously COVID time, we didn't stay up, and it's horrible. It really is a horrible feeling to be in that position. And I've said it previously, and I don't wish this on anyone apart from him, maybe. But the championship is not a nice place to play. Now, don't get me wrong, I've nothing against the teams that are in there, but as a big team, you do not want to be in that championship.
Why is that? I mean, why do you say that?
It's just every team is up for it. Every team sees it as a cup final. They make it difficult for you. It is. I've said it before. It's a very competitive league. Now, we were kind of fortunate the first time we were there, 2014. We had Hibs and Rangers in it, and I thought this is going to be tough. This will be really tough. But we actually ended up winning it very comfortably. And in the second tour of asking, it was more of a struggle, but that was more about us. You know, I think we didn't do great that season, but the championship was so difficult to get out of, and I never want to be in that league again.
No, I think next season will be even harder. Falkirk are going to be there. Falkirk are another one of these clubs. Dunfermline, Thistle, United, obviously, they've been up and down a bit. Morton up to a point, but there's a lot of clubs there that can lay claim to being, good, solid, top half, if I can put it like that, of the old of the entire Scottish League, as opposed to, the greatest respect, the ones which have always tended to be down at the bottom end. And to that extent, you're looking at a league which is going to be really hard to get out of. And anybody watching this might think, yeah, well, he's actually just a little bit despondent after the game yesterday. It's what I've been watching all season. I can remember us getting relegated under Billy Stark, and it was just grim. You're turning up week after week. You know what it's like. If we're relegated, it's by our own efforts. In your case, to be fair, it was by a dodgy email, allegedly. He said getting the allegedly in quite quickly, But I think that most St Johnstone fans now think that we're going down. I think Hibs, if you're a Hibs fan, you'll be pleased that you won yesterday. There weren't an awful lot of Hibs fans there. That was noticeable. Normally, they'd fill the stand behind the goal, the North stand. They obviously filled their wee end of the West stand, but I think that's a reflection of how their season's gone. 30 seconds from the top six, and then it just changes. And that's football. But I suspect if you're a Hibs fan, while you're pleased yesterday, you're probably still thinking, where are we going to go next year? That's and I've got friends who are big Hibbies, and that seems to be what's in their minds. It's like, okay, this has not been a good season. Who can we keep? Who's going to go? Who's going to? Hanlon obviously is getting towards the end of his career. Those kind of things. Where are we going to go? And these are the things which, again, I know that all sensible clubs should have been looking at since the start of the season. Not now. They're working on it from Christmas onwards. The manager going to the chairman and saying, here's my list of players. Here's the guys I want. Here's the guys I've seen on Football Manager who might be quite good. That kind of thing. I don't see how, well, Hibs to some extent, particularly St Johnstone, actually can even do that, because if it's true that the guy who's going to buy the club is not going to buy us if we get relegated, then what actually happens to our club?
Good afternoon to our St Mirren fan. As Lino, calamitous slip into the keeper meant nothing from a good performance today for the Buds, which is very true. I think St Mirren did play well. And Paul says, I'm guessing Hibs fans are probably feeling similar to Aberdeen fans and just wanting the season to come to an end. I think that's what it is. I did see the Hibs crowd yesterday. It wasn't great. And I think Hibs finishing the bottom six and Aberdeen finishing bottom six is not where anyone thought they would be. Hibs want to finish best of the rest. That's fine. It was a good performance from them yesterday. They were helped by St Johnstone being really poor, but it's been a very, very poor season for Hibs. They've had a really poor season. And for me, I've said it as well to Mike, the Hibs fan, before, their best player's been Malouda, who signed in January. But he'll leave in January. So there's a lot of rebuilding work to do at Hibs, I think, come the summer.
Well, that was the point I was just making. Obviously, change of managers don't help. We've had that, and the manager has got to be looking at who he wants to bring in and who's likely to leave. So we're talking about Bruce Anderson. I was talking about Dan Phillips. And you're thinking, okay, right, well, who are we going to replace? So in our case, no matter what, we've got to replace our defence, because our defence is ancient. You'll be looking at your own team thinking, who can we replace? We talked about Celtic in the midfield, possibly O'Reilly going. Very hard to replace a player of that quality. But Celtic probably have enough money, because they're obviously same with the old firm generally. They can bring in these players which nobody else can look at. They're not good enough to really go anywhere near the top flight in England. They quite fancy the chance of being in a shop window winning trophies. So they have that on offer. But nobody else in Scotland does. We haven't got the money for a start. We simply have not got the money.
I think they're just kicking off the second half at Dens. It is still Dundee 0, Celtic 1. That goes from James Forrest after half an hour. So Celtic, at the moment, still in control of that game. You touched on it earlier on, Alistair, the fixtures. St Johnstone have to go to Pittodrie next week. Now, Aberdeen have not had a great season. We all know that. I mean, I know that you're not overly impressed with St Johnstone at the moment. Is this a game that you think St Johnstone could actually get something out of?
Well, in the same way that pigs might fly, yes. We won at Pittodrie not that long ago. We won by our Levine's sole attacking tactic, which is to hit the ball long quickly and hope that one of the sprint merchants gets on the end of it, which actually happened. Now, I think we've scored 2 goals by that tactic so far. So, 1 goal every 10 games, and that should maybe get us a couple of draws. We've actually done well against Aberdeen this year. We should have beaten them the game at McDermott, the previous one. And that was the one when obviously there was the VAR controversy with Carey's goal being disallowed and the Aberdeen penalty. So are we due? The only way I can see us winning is if we get some not the luck of the draw, but if we get a sort of something comes out of left field, like Aberdeen get 2 players sent off, or preferably the goalkeeper, or the entire Aberdeen team goes down with sort of, I don't know, staggers and bots or something. Nothing particularly serious, but just to keep them out the team for a week. I will be amazed if we get anything at Aberdeen. The next 2 games after that are the ones for us. We've got Livingston away, which we've got to win, and then we've got Ross County at Perth, which we've got to win. It's as simple as that.
You mentioned the Levine contract. It's 3 years, and I was surprised about that as well. I mean, if St Johnstone go down, hopefully they don't, but if they were to go down, could you see Levine staying to manage in the Championship, or do you think that'll be him off?
The one thing that surprised me, and this is actually going to answer your question in a roundabout way, which, as you probably gathered, is the only way I can actually answer questions. I'm surprised there has not been. I mean, there's been a lot of stuff on social media, but there's not been there's been no banners, there's been no chants, none of the, stuff you normally get in these circumstances. I mean, I can think of when we weren't doing all that well under Callum, people I know who were all for sort of organising protests after the game, and there was stuff again on Saints channels about that. I'm not seeing that yet. Would he want to manage there? I hope not. On the other hand, if he's got a 3-year contract, it goes back to what I was saying about footballers and all that kind of stuff. We've got Stevie May, who's on a 3-year contract. Stevie May is hardly getting in the team. He was offered the chance to go to Queen's Park, didn't go. Why didn't he go? Because I know this, he said to the club, I've got a contract, I'm just going to sit here and take the money, and I'll get a game occasionally. So he might, I think, possibly. There are so many variables, because I made mention before, but we don't know what's happening with the sale. I would love, and he won't do this, but I would love Jeff Brown to come out and say, right, here's a statement on the club website. This is where we are. I can't tell you X, Y, and Z because of legal things, but we've got a guy in line. This is what's happening. This is what we expect to happen. The fans would then at least know where we stand. And if it's the case that part of the deal is that the deal fails if we get relegated, then there's a huge onus on the players and the manager to make that happen, which hopefully would give them the necessary kick up, the whatever, to actually, spur them on to action. But it might also sort of flush out from Levine's perspective, do I want to be at this club with a new boss in charge? Because it was Jeff that brought him in. And if Jeff is no longer in charge, the new guy might look at it and go, actually, you know what? I fancy somebody else, because that's what new bosses tend to do. So I don't know, but there's all these possibilities. The really, really bad scenario is that the club isn't sold, and then we get relegated, and actually we could be banging it. We've nearly gone out of business twice in our history. I'm not saying it's as bad as that, but it doesn't take too much for clubs to fall away. Bear in mind, when Jeff took over, we were actually, on one occasion, we lost the game, I think, just as he got involved. We were the bottom team in the entire Scottish League. And that's a measure of his achievement, of how much he's done for St Johnstone. He's taken us from there, the lowest rung, the lowest place in the lowest table in the top flight, to Europe and cups and all that. Well, everything we've had today. So huge amount of respect, and he's one of the two most important people in our club's history. But now there's a real danger it might fall apart. We just don't know what's happening.
Yeah, tough time for St Johnstone, but a big, big win for Hibs as they try and finish best of the rest with a 3-1 win yesterday. I'm going to leave Hearts till last, not because it was 0-0, but I want to talk about half an hour about Hearts. I don't really, but I just said that. Let's go Pittodrie. Paul Donaldson's team, Aberdeen, got a 1-0 win over Motherwell with a goal from Stefan Gartman after 60 minutes. There wasn't much in the game, but the big, big moment was in 56 minutes. Jack Vale is sent off for a challenge on Jack McKenzie. Now, this has caused a lot of debate with certain different people. I spoke to Stephen Rayside, a Motherwell fan on our group chat earlier, who said it was a red card. A couple of Motherwell fans on Twitter yesterday said it's a red card. Watching BBC Sports yesterday, the panel said it's not a red card. Alistair, I'm interested to get your thoughts on that. Do you think it's a red card? Do you think it's harsh?
I always think if it was my club, what would I think? I can kind of understand why it's given. Because on the face of it, the guy's obviously, if I can give you some examples round about it, we actually saw one today with Butland when he came out. Now, the actual law on it is quite straightforward, and actually I wrote this down, so I'm going to have a quick look. Serious foul play is defined as a tackle or challenge that endangers the safety of an opponent. It must be sanctioned as serious foul play. So how a referee perceives a tackle or a challenge that endangers the safety of an opponent. Now, you could argue that Butland's challenge endangered the safety of an opponent. You could argue that, exactly the same with Vale. You could also argue, as the guys in sports team did, that he got the ball first and he followed through and got the player, and it was an accident and the booking was probably about right, which is what Butland got. Mm-hmm. I would have been not remotely concerned if they'd only been given a yellow card, because I don't think, again, fans say things like he never set out to get him, he never set out to hurt him. That doesn't matter in the laws. It's, as I've just read out, endangers the safety of an opponent. Now, I've actually looked into this in a bit more detail because I'm that kind of sad anorak. I can't find, there will be somewhere buried in the small print, because there's 200 pages of the laws, right? There's only 17, and the rest of it's pages and pages of explanation. And when people do refereeing courses, they get given this kind of scenario. What would you do? So the trainee refs are given that bit of video and saying, should he have been sent off? And you can almost guarantee that they'll disagree. So I can think of a friend of mine who's been an official at Premier League First Division level back in the day, top flight official, who would have allowed St Johnstone's goal against Dundee to stand, despite the fact the referee didn't. So officials themselves aren't going to be 100% correct. Well, they're going to be correct in their own mind, but they're not necessarily going to agree. I actually think he was unlucky. I think the referee could have given him a yellow card. It was Craig Napier, if I remember correctly.
It was, yeah.
I have seen, I won't tell you which club it was. It wasn't mine, just in case anybody thinks it was mine, right? But a senior official at the club who showed me a golf ball with the words Craig Napier written on it, because he was unimpressed by Craig Napier's refereeing and he was going to go and hit this into the nearest lake. I find Craig Napier one of the more, as you know, I'm very pro referees. I find Craig Napier one of the more officious ones, and I think the officious ones are the ones players don't like. But I still think that could have been a yellow card, would have probably sufficed. If he'd gone in and hacked him down and, wasn't anywhere near the ball and he didn't get the ball first, different kettle of fish, but he did. You could quite clearly see he did. Mitov against Hibs at Easter Road comes out, punches the ball, takes the Hibs player out. Probably good case for a red card, but wasn't given. So the consistency thing is always the argument that we come out with as fans, but I think you've got to sympathise with the referees. You only get one chance to look at it. The VAR backed it up. Well, the VAR would, wouldn't it? You know, I mean, what do you think, Graham? And you asked me, but I think a yellow card would have sufficed.
I can see both views. I think it was very, very harsh. I mean, he does get the ball. I always love managers and pundits and stuff that come out and say he's not that type of boy. It doesn't matter. You've made the challenge. Honestly, I'll laugh at it every time I hear somebody say he's not that kind of player. It really doesn't matter if he's not that kind of player. At that moment, he's done it. It doesn't matter if he's that type of player or not. But I think it does look very harsh because, as Neil McCann said yesterday, he does fully get the ball. And, I mean, Stuart Kirtway, his comments yesterday were he wasn't happy. You know, he basically said that Craig Napier and let Usain Bolt to give the red card. Now, I don't know. I mean, I'm assuming it did go to VAR, but they've obviously decided you've not made a mistake. And he probably hasn't. But it did feel harsh at the time. Yeah,
that would be my view. And if a player goes to clear the ball, it's at head height. I mean, the overhead scissors kicks, the other obvious one. That's perfectly legit, and the law says it's legit, so long as it's not endangering an opponent. So if you do it, and the guys now again, we can all remember as school children you probably can't, you're too young, but used to get these things in comics that explain the laws of the game, and it was always the case that if you put your head down, you were the person who was endangering yourself. Therefore, the free kick was against you. It's an indirect free kick. But if a player is actually, you know, it's in that grey area between the defender having his head down and the forward having his head too high up, or it's a ball where a defender's facing his own goal and he's trying to clear it over his head, so he's got his eyes on the ball, somebody comes in behind him and actually tries to head it and gets kicked in the head, and I've seen players sent off for that. That's much harder. And I think it's partly this atmosphere that surrounds referees nowadays, that everything's got to be absolutely as per the book. And the law 18 that I've referred to before, use your common sense, goes out the window. Use your common sense. And in those circumstances, Vale would have probably stayed on the ground. But you've got to remember that the referee, even the top referees, have got assessors watching them and actually writing a report on them and saying, you know, this is what I found. Now, if you go back far enough, the days of people like Tiny Wharton, right? Tiny Wharton would actually, this is absolutely true, again, going back to researching the referee stuff, at the start of a game, the players have got to be, or they used to have to be, in their own half of the pitch, right? Tiny Wharton would pull up a referee in his assessment if the opposition player had his boots over the line at the kickoff. And his thinking about it, his reason for doing so was because he said a referee that can't get the small things right won't get the big things right. So it was very much of that era. So that's strict, you know, absolutely to the letter. And that's fine so long as you actually are absolutely to the letter. But in those days, there was also this common sense thing. And I think that's gone out the game because of all the pressure they're under. Not helped by the... I mean, again, we'll go for a tangent here, but I now find when I'm going back from Perth, I put Radio Scotland on and I have to switch it off. It is unlistenable. It's just hysterical shouting at each other. Anyway, yeah, referees get a hard time. Yellow card was sufficient. Aberdeen deserved to win just, and it wasn't a very good game. I don't know what Paul thinks. We just in the first half of the match. Yeah.
He's in the comments here. So was released to get the 3 points. The match definitely turned after the red card. I was sitting over the other side from the incident. My initial reaction was it was a yellow card. Ref was very quick to pull out the red card. Seeing replay on TV, I think it's quite harsh, which is fair. And probably should have been a yellow, but can see why a red was given. VAR check took ages as usual. First half of the match was poor from both teams. Aberdeen dominated after Motherwell went down to 10, but wasted so many chances. Could have been 3 or 4 if Aberdeen were more clinical. But I just want to go back to that red card for a second, because I remember this was weeks and weeks ago. We talked about this in the show, and obviously I had my own opinion, Michael had his own opinion. But I go back to the Yang incident with Alec Cochrane, Celtic against Hearts. Yang gets sent off. Now, for me, that's a sending off because his foot's high. He catches Cochrane, that for me is a red card. And at the time, I could not understand why there was such a debate about that. Celtic fans were raging it got a red card. But I kind of thought to myself, well, if that's the other way around and that's Cochrane or Yang, you're wanting a red card for that. So you can't have it both ways.
No, but football fans do. It's like, I remember seeing Brian Gray when he played for Saints come out, and I think it was against Dundee United, an absolutely shocking dive, which a penalty was awarded. Now, VAR probably nowadays would have spent 5 minutes deciding that it wasn't a penalty, but it was a shocking dive. And I go back to my earlier comments. Fans don't like players cheating, even their own players, but they'll bite the bullet. So, in that case, the Celtic fans, you're absolutely right. We're all base hypocrites. When it goes against their team, it's absolutely disgraceful. When it goes for our team, it's, well, yes, and you can see it going back to the previous weekend in the Aberdeen penalty that wasn't given against Celtic in the cup game. Celtic fans queuing up to say that was, it was clearly a foul. I think it was two players jumping ahead of the ball. And I suspect that most other non-Celtic fans would have agreed with that. But the decision was given, and that's it over. So we've either got to accept that these guys make mistakes and get on with it, which is my preferred option, or we just become a computer game in which everything is analysed down to the last degree and all the fun goes out of it. And currently there's not much fun in it anyway because you're a Saints fan, but it's just, we've got to do something about this.
Good to see Stephen in the chat. Stephen Rayside, our good friend, the Motherwell fan. For me, I know he's tried to control it and been blessed by Mackenzie, but in my opinion, he's still high and endangered opponent. So that's the Motherwell fan's opinion. So, but I mean, in terms of the game, again, only watching the highlights, I think Aberdeen did deserve to win. But I have to say, I think Peter Leaven in the short time he's had has done a very good job. He's managing to get Aberdeen up the league a little bit, obviously. I think that's now 5 games undefeated. They were excellent last week against Celtic. Very unfortunate to lose that cup game. He's done a very good job with that team.
He has, and I mean they've had so many problems. I mean, I've said on this show before, I lived in Aberdeen when they were a great team, and living in School Hill when they won the Cup Winners' Cup, that was a very noisy night. So Aberdeen fans, bit like Hearts, Hibs, and very much the Old Firm fans, they don't like it when their team is not doing so well because there's this feeling that we should be beating these teams, with the greatest respect to Motherwell, who are still quite a decent-sized Scottish club, bigger than us probably. So for Aberdeen and Hibs and Hearts when they come down, it's really painful. Normally for other clubs, it's like St Johnstone, St Mirren, Dundee to some extent because they've not been good for a long time. It's more normal, if I can put it like that. So you kind of accept it more. I just think that you look at Scottish football just now and you think the standard is. So I'm going off a tangent again here, actually, Graham. But the standard is the standard is sufficiently low just now, and I think most people would agree with that. That actually, if we're not careful, the product, if I can call it that, it's not going to wither and die because it's still incredibly popular. But we're missing something just now. There's something not. There's things that could be better. Do I know what the answer is? Would it be a bigger league? I think it might be. You would have far less excitement towards the end of it because there would be teams that would be quite safe. But you know what? They could then come and play the Fran Franjics, the young guys. You can actually see these guys coming through the team and having a platform on which they can not worry about getting relegated, not worry about the pressure and just try and play. And that's better for Scottish football, I think. I'd love to know what Stephen's thoughts are in relation to Motherwell. I don't know if he can come on the comment in the chat and let us know. But I mean, Motherwell have had a season which is probably not quite what they expected at the start, but it's better than they thought it was going to be part of the way through it when obviously they're on that terrible run. They're going to be all right. They're going to be all right. So season as far as they're concerned is over. But what have they got to look forward to? Are there guys they can bring in who can actually, they can look at some of the young kids and make a huge difference? I don't know, but if I was Stephen, I'd love to see that happening. Same for Paul, the Aberdeen fan. They've had some really good youngsters over the years. Give them a run out, preferably next Saturday, and let's hope they have a really bad game.
I mean, you talk about the standard of football there, and I mean, he got criticised for it at the time, but some of what Derek Adams said was actually right, but he might have had a bit more credit had they won the game, but they got beat. So that's kind of what he was. But some of what he said, actually, it did ring true about the standard of football.
Yeah, I think that is absolutely true. I mean, you cannot begin to imagine any Scottish club beating Bayern Munich as Aberdeen did in that Cup Winners' Cup run, or beating Real Madrid, couple of that. I mean, seriously, beating Real Madrid, and that team did that. I mean, that's a measure of the how far we've regressed compared to other teams. I mean, Aberdeen have regressed. Leaving has made a difference. We'll wait and see what the new guy does. If the new guy, whose name has completely escaped me again, another senior moment, but you'll tell me in a minute, I'm sure. If he doesn't get it right, then the Aberdeen fans, I think, will turn again quite quickly. So it'll be intriguing to see how it goes.
Yeah, Paul says, Leaving has found a way to get results in matches when we're not playing well. A lot more positive about staying up than I was 6 weeks ago, but we're still not 100% safe and got to work hard. I think Aberdeen are fine now. I think Jimmy Thiel will come in and do a decent job. But I've said it before, I think Leaving's done a great job so far. He's taken that team who were on a bit of a downer. He's managed to get them wins. And like I said last week, they were brilliant against Celtic. Unfortunate to win the game. And he's done a really good job. Now, the big thing for Aberdeen, and listen, he probably will go eventually, will be, can they keep hold of Majowski? Because he's the one they need to keep hold of. If they keep hold of him, brilliant. But Thielen have his own ideas who he wants to bring in, the squad that he's going to want. Again, I saw a lot of, listen to some of these sports sign things. And the arguments about, Jimmy Thielen should be here now, it should be in the door now. Well, not really. Leaving's done a decent job so far.
That was one of the points at which I switched off the radio yesterday when they were having that inane argument about whether he should be here now or not. Fact of the matter is he's not, so you get on with it. And incidentally, Paul, you're saying you're feeling a lot more positive than you were about 6 weeks ago. Listen, if you've been watching St Johnstone the last couple of weeks, you have absolutely no reason to be anything other than 100% positive. There is absolutely no way that Aberdeen are going to finish below St Johnstone. And there's probably not much chance of you finishing below Ross County either. I very much think Aberdeen have got Ross County last game of the season, in fact. And I'm obviously hoping that they turn them over. So it's... I think Aberdeen, for them, it's the point I made before. It's how do you actually get players in? Now, a new manager hasn't had the opportunity that most established managers do to look at their squad. Obviously, you can look at it now, but it's much harder to go and get players for a new manager at this time in the cycle than it is for an established manager who would be normally going about between the 1st of January and now to actually say, look, these are the guys we want. These are the guys we've identified. So I can see that being difficult, I noticed that, as Lino said, that 3 foreigners rule Scottish clubs had a chance back then. Now Real Madrid by success. Well, that's kind of true, but with the greatest respect, I'm not sure I entirely agree with that, because Real Madrid were still Real Madrid, and they have the most successful club in European football history. We had a different approach as well. I mean, if you look at that Aberdeen team, it was mainly Scottish players. You can go back with sort of rose-tinted spectacles or green-tinted spectacles, and the Celtic team that, all within whatever it was, radius of Glasgow. Those days have gone now, but I don't know many people who would actually argue that Scottish football is anything other than a lot lower standard now than it was back in, say, the 80s, when you had Dundee United and Aberdeen winning the league, winning European trophies, getting European finals. I just don't. So, obviously all about opinions, as they say.
And it looks like Celtic have wrapped up the points at Dens Park this afternoon. It's a second goal for Celtic after 67 minutes, and it's a second goal for James Forrest. Now, it's funny because still a lot of Celtic fans, when James Forrest names in the team sheet, go, why is he still here? Well, that's why. Because he's managed to get Celtic 3 points, so it looks like, this afternoon.
Not only that, but I think he was he not brought into the team to start this game? So he was, I think, the only change possibly that Rodgers made.
Yeah, he was, yeah.
So Rodgers is all of a sudden a tactical genius who is going to win Celtic the league for this week. And then next week, whenever I'm not sure who they're playing next week, but if they happen to... Hearts, bigger point is Hearts, yes. Well, there we go. So Hearts take a point off them, and Rodgers is a complete imbecile. That's being a football fan.
just in terms of Motherwell's next game, they play Livingston at home next week. Now, I know that Livingston won yesterday, but Stephen, if you're still watching this, that's got to be a game that Motherwell looking to get 3 points from.
I'm expecting Stephen to actually come in and say something, but of course he's not here to do that. Yes, I am absolutely convinced that Motherwell will beat Livingston, because I can't see Livingston winning 2 games in a row. And Motherwell are good enough to do that. And I think the other thing is that once Livy, would that consign them to relegation if they lose next week?
Yeah, I mean, if it would have done it yesterday if they lost, but it definitely does it next week if they lose.
Right. So if that's the case, this is the way football fans' minds work. So you're thinking about it and thinking, right, okay, so if Livy actually know they're relegated, the pressure's off, so they'll play without any fear and they'll beat us 3-0 when we play them at Livingston, right? Or Livingston have been relegated, so they'll be totally hacked off and they won't bother, and we'll win 3-0. So toss a coin.
That's what you're hoping for it anyway. So that was the game at Pittodrie. Aberdeen 1, Motherwell 0. Like I said, Gartman's goal, but there wasn't really much else in the game. And I've decided to save the best till last, even though it finished 0-0. I'm going to finish on Kilmarnock against Hearts, because I watched the game. It was a very good game for a 0-0 draw. I thought Hearts were very good in the first half, controlled the game, hit the woodwork twice. Kilmarnock came into it second half. But before we came on air, actually Alison made the point, and it's a good point. 2 very good teams. And I thought it was a really good game.
Yeah. I'm conscious I should probably shut up, because I talked about St Johnstone for about 5 hours, and really this is your team and you should revel in the moment. Hearts are where they are because they're a good team. They deserve to be third in the league. They will be third in the league, but Kilmarnock are where they are because they're a good team too. They've got a good manager. They've got a decent budget. They're paying players money that other clubs like mine can't afford. But you've still got to gel that into a team. It's one of these, you look at English clubs. So, for example, my wife's from Stoke, right? Now, Stoke, one of the founders of the English Football League, finding members. A sleeping giant? Not really, but they're one of those kind of clubs, and Killie are a bit like that. Killie, one of the few teams that have actually won the Scottish League, apart from Celtic and Rangers since the war. Obviously, Hearts, Hibs, Dundee, United, Aberdeen, but there's not many, and Killie obviously did do it, albeit on goal average and all that kind of stuff back in the day. And the old rugby park, I don't know if you were ever at it, Graham, when it was still the old bowl before it got done up.
I was, yeah.
Yeah, you're older than you look. so
I know, I feel it, I know.
I mean, that was a real proper Scottish ground. You go there for a cup game at night, and it was really proper Scottish football. This sounds terribly old, traditionalist, boring old, you know what. But it would be a bit misty and dark and dank, and the floodlights would come on, and Andy Rhodes was in goal for St Johnstone, which was always a bit of a disaster. And you would actually just feel this is proper football, So you look at it and you go, yeah, now it's the original site, the old stand, which is a bit of a wooden, fire trap. But the rest of it is actually a good ground. And it's a place where if it's doing well, we'll get decent support. And you can see that when they've got through the cup finals. They turn out. They obviously don't turn out after the cup final, because that's what happens to all teams like Killie, but they have a latent support in that area. They've got a rival down the road in Ayr United. Again, going back to my 16-18 team league thing, if Ayr United and Killie were in the same league, there's another derby where you would get huge crowds. Mm-hmm. All those things are good for Scottish football, but we're constrained into this, 12-team box, partly because, I'm having a real go at the media today, partly because the media love it. It gives them the opportunity to talk about stuff and, put pressure on managers and all that kind of stuff. As an aside, I'd quite like actually to see football fans actually going out and saying, you know what, I listened to Joe blogs on Radio Clyde or Josephine blogs on Radio Scotland, and actually they're rubbish. They should be fired, because that's what these guys do with managers. Oh yes, but we don't want to see anybody getting fired. Yes, you do. You might feel sorry for them, but you don't care. You actually are quite happy to get fired because it gives you what used to be column inches. It gives you an opportunity to have a fight with Michael Stewart on the radio, all those kind of things. And I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but I actually think there should be more responsibility in the press. It's all about the story now. And while the story is important, the facts are equally important. So again, football historians hat on, you look back at reports and you look at this thing, and I've read match reports that have got players that says ex-player Joe Bloggs scored a goal for St Johnstone. The only problem with that was that Joe Bloggs was actually playing for St Mirren at the time, and they can't even identify the players. A friend of mine who's a sports journalist, retired, tells me a story of his young days, a game at Wraith Rovers. A penalty was given. The guys in the press box didn't know who actually had been fouled for the penalty. So he was sent out to the crowd as the youngest reporter there to find out who'd been fouled. Came back in again and discovered who it was. Penalty had been taken and scored. And they were arguing about who'd scored because they didn't know either. So yes, they're important, but I do wish that we didn't have this constant desire to create and stoke controversy. I'm going off a massive tangent again, but it's something which actually I do feel quite strongly about. We've gone from, say, the very relaxed, slightly more urbane Richard Gordon to the hysteria of Kenny McIntyre, who does not see a drama without trying to make a crisis. And it's actually, to my mind, it's switching me off. I just don't listen to it now. And I've seen other posts on Facebook. I don't think I'm the only one. Scottish football deserves better than this, I think. End of
Another goal at Dens Park, and Adam Ida has scored, but not for Celtic. It's their own goal. So I was maybe a bit rushed there to say that Celtic have got the 3 points wrapped up, because it is now Dundee 1, Celtic 2 with 15 minutes to go. Ooh. Could we see a bit of a surprise here? But just going back to the game yesterday, I mean, again, first half I thought Hearts were very impressive. I thought Benny Birmingham was controlling the first half. That, for me, was the best I've seen Cameron Devlin for a long time. I thought he was outstanding yesterday. But before the game, I thought if we can get out of Rugby Park without defeat, 11 points clear, delighted with that. We still are, 4 games to go. And it's funny because I watched an interview with Stephen Robinson the other day, and he talked about who his manager of the year would be. And he said Stephen Naismith. Now, I think he's done a great job. I said at the start of the season I wasn't thinking it was going to be a good appointment because he was too inexperienced. He was only managed the B team. There was a whole drama with a whole interview on Sky with him and who was the manager, who was the sporting director, all that kind of stuff. But the job he's done to take Hearts to 2 semi-finals in his first season, to get us third, to get us European football, I actually think it's been fantastic. I really do. He's done a brilliant job.
Yes, and I watched the highlights, and it looked like a really good game. I've not spoken to any of my neighbours who are Killie fans, but I will do at some stage this week. It showed two good teams, as you said at the start. I mean, let me ask you a question about it, because it's your team. I mean, you had Xander Clark coming back in. Was that, obviously, Gordon was in for the cup games. He is a top-class goalkeeper, Gordon. There's no getting away from it. But Xander Clark, would he now be your number one choice for Hearts?
I think he would be. I don't think he's done a lot wrong. I've said that all season. And yesterday was actually his 15th clean sheet of the season, which, again, is outstanding. It's testament to the job that we've done defensively as well. I'm a massive, massive fan of Craig Gordon. Like, I was brought up with guys like Henry Smith. But for me, Craig Gordon is the best keeper I've seen at Hearts. He's a phenomenal goalkeeper. To come back from the injury that he had, the double leg break, to still be playing at his age is outstanding. But I think Xander Clark has been excellent. And I think somebody mentioned it as well yesterday, and I do agree with this as well. We've probably got 2 of the best goalkeepers. Obviously, we've got Meathoff as well, but we've got 2 top goalkeepers in that squad. So if one goes out, the other comes in, it's not a massive problem. I just think we've got a really good backup goalkeeper there.
Yeah, I think that's actually right. You do have, your 2 goalkeepers are the 2 best pair, if you like, I think, in the league. I thought your defence was very good yesterday. Thought, because you've got a team that attack you with width, with Armstrong, in particular, who's just a very, very good player. And you absolutely had to stand up to a lot of good cross balls. And then going back to Xander, I think towards the end he made a save which basically kept you in the game so you didn't lose. I think Gordon is a better keeper than Xander, or I don't think Xander's going to get to Gordon's height, if I can put it like that. I actually think Meathoff's a better keeper than Xander, but that's another story. Hearts deserved... did they deserve to win? That's a good question. Did they deserve to draw? What do you think, Graham?
I think certainly first half, I think we could have been 3 or 4 up. Second half was more even, but I still think we had a couple of decent chances. Shanklin, the one just over the bar. Actually, I'm a big Lawrence Shanklin fan. I love the guy. I actually thought it was quite poor yesterday. He didn't have a great game yesterday. He had one chance. He laid a decent ball in for George Grant. I think he should do better with. But Shanklin wasn't great yesterday. His touch looked miles off it. He wasn't linking the play as much as normally does. But I think we probably did on the chances we had. I think we deserved to win.
Okay. What about the pitch there? Because obviously that's something else which makes a difference to the game.
Yeah, I'm not a massive fan of that plastic pitch. I never have been. Listen, it works for Kilmarnock, but there was a few times the players were slipping yesterday. You know, players couldn't get the ball under control. I understand why Kilmarnock use it, but I know that is getting binned eventually, and I'll be glad when it does, because I've said before, I don't think plastic pitches should be in the Premier League. Lower down, fine, but I don't think they should be in the Premier League.
Yeah, I entirely agree. I mean, I think the old Kilmarnock pitch, which looked like someone out of, a carpet warehouse, it really did. I think they got the Hoover out afterwards. There wasn't a blade of plastic grass on it. It was bad, but the Livy one, when it was just put in, when basically you were playing on all these little black balls that used to come pinging up every time the ball hit the ground, is still probably the worst, I think. But I don't know. Maybe you do know, Graham. I mean, are we definitely bringing in some kind of change to Scottish football that they've got to be phased out at a certain date, or are we not? Do you know?
I'm not entirely sure about that. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean, I would be quite happy for that, because I agree with you. Football's at that level has got to be played on grass. It just makes it gives teams an unfair advantage. And I know teams get an advantage from playing at home anyway, but it's an additional advantage. You can't go back in time, but if Livy were playing on grass rather than that plastic, what difference would it have made? Probably not a lot, to be honest, but it'd be interesting to find out.
As Lino says, Naismith seems to be learning fast on the job. It's a shame for Gordon getting that injury. He should be Hearts and Scotland's number one. And Paul Donaldson says the sooner plastic pitches are gone from the top flight, the better, which I agree with. But I do want to talk about Kilmarnock, though, because again, sitting fourth, they've had a great season. They'll be in European football. You are right. You know, they bombard you with crosses. They are very, very difficult to play against. Defensively, I think look really good. I think Lewis, Mayo, Stuart Finlay, a really good partnership at the back. They've got a guy up front in Kyle Lascelles who causes massive problems with his physical presence. They're a very, very good unit. They are very difficult to play against. And to be fair, we've not actually lost to Kilmarnock this season, which I'm actually quite impressed by, because they're a hard side to play against.
They've also got some strength and depth. I like the boy Dees. I think he's again another very solid player. You could stick him into the central defence. I don't think make a blind bit of difference. Their goalkeeper's not bad. They're just an all-round very good team. And again, they're organised well. They break. They've got pace. Matty Kennedy, obviously, and the boy Armstrong. And they've got width. I mean, this is the one. So I'm going to sound another part of my ongoing St Johnstone rant. You can't win without at least one decent winger. You were talking about James Forrest earlier on. There's a guy who can make a huge difference to a team. And if you've got width, you're going to create chances. If you haven't, you're going to create far fewer chances and score far fewer goals. And Kilmarnock actually create width on both sides. And it's brilliant to see, because as a fan, here's a rhetorical question for you, Graham, and anybody else who's watching this. Apart from scoring goals, is there any better sight in football than a winger taking on a full back and beating them with skill?
No, I've said this before as well. Obviously, I was brought up in the kind of late 80s or early 80s, I should say. And I loved John Coohan at Hearts. He was like a proper, typical old-fashioned winger. Head down, take his man on. Neil McCann, Jose Katongo. I love these kind of guys that just get the ball, get to the ball and put crosses in. I love that kind of winger. And I think you don't really get a lot of that nowadays, though. And it's a shame, because it's a dying art now. Actually getting a ball, taking a man on, getting a cross in the box. But guys like Danny Armstrong and Matty Kennedy do it very, very well.
They absolutely do. And again, you're not old enough to remember him, because he did play for Hearts. He had his better time at St Johnstone was Kenny Aird, who was the classic little red-haired Scottish winger. And if you talk to older Heart fans, they'll remember him. And Kenny's not particularly well nowadays. He lives down on the south coast of England. But, you talk to him about football, and he absolutely loves reminiscing about his time in the past. And he talks about nowadays how, exactly as you said, Graham, there's no dribbling in the game, or there's very little dribbling in the game. And it's because the ball goes out, it's recycled back because nobody's got the courage to take on the full back. And this is going to sound, again, boring old you know what, but Willie Ormond, who was not a bad winger in his day, he used to tell the St Johnstone winger, so you had Ken Ayre on one side, he was the little Jimmy Johnson, red-headed, classic Tanner ball player winger, and Fred Ake on the other side, who was totally different, big, languid, could cross a ball on a sixpence. I used to say to Jim Pearson, you just stand in the middle, son, and nod your head. You know? But Ormond used to tell them, take your full back on, because you're a better player than him. That's why you're a winger. And he said, you'll get beaten by the full back more often than you beat him. But once you beat him and get to byline, the game changes. And we've got a chance of scoring a goal. And I very much believe that that's gone out of the game to game's detriment. The courage, the lack of courage in actually taking risks. And managers are so petrified of losing. And it comes back to pressure they're under and all the kind of stuff we've got with the media and the fact you get relegated so easily. And the fact that it's so much easier to do the safe thing than do the risky thing. But somebody beating a player, scoring, crossing for a goal, that, apart from the goal itself, is what we go and watch football for. And it's lacking in not just Scottish football, but English football as well. Incidentally, I know you've probably got a laptop or something there, Graham, but the Spurs-Arsenal game finished?
Well, you said there'd be more goals than there was, but it finished 3-2 to Arsenal. Tottenham nearly had the great comeback there, but just couldn't quite go over the line.
Oh, gosh, right. Yeah, that would have been a good game to watch, actually, but I've got a Gunner friend who will be on the phone tomorrow morning crowing. But anyway, that's by the way.
Yeah, one of my best mates is an Arsenal fan who's been winding up at Liverpool, so he's going to be unbearable now for the rest of the night, unfortunately.
If I can go back to Hearts then, so how do you see the rest of the season going?
I think we'll definitely get third. I think it's done now, and I think it'll be a good chance the last few games of the season to bring a few players that haven't maybe had much game time. The likes of guys like Tagawa, maybe Oda might get a chance. A few younger lads might get a chance. Tate did come on yesterday for Benny, who went off with dizziness, unfortunately. But I think it just gives us a chance to kind of relax for the last few games, know that it's done. And I genuinely think it's been a very, very encouraging season for Hearts. And it's going to be interesting next season because we've got European football. We'll be playing every Thursday, Sunday. We need a bigger squad. And it'll be interesting to see how we handle it. But generally, I think Naismith, as Lino said earlier, is learning on the job. And he's done a magnificent job because generally, I've said this before, I did not think he was the right man for the job. And I'm delighted I was proved wrong because he definitely is.
Well, I think we've got the opposite situation in St Johnstone. Quite a lot of people initially thought that Levine was the right man for the job, and now nobody does. So I can sort of empathise in reverse. And just in terms, dare I ask you about your friends across Edinburgh? Because obviously they've not had such a good season. I mean, how do you see them going in the course of the next few games?
I've kind of said previously that I think them and Aberdeen will improve next season because they have to. I think they've obviously got the investment through Bill Foley. There's been a lot of people talking about should Montgomery be sacked. I don't think he should. As an unbiased opinion, I don't think he should be. He needs more time. He needs to bring his own players in. He needs to get a bit more stability there. But I think they'll do all right next season. They should be up there challenging for Hearts and Aberdeen. Where they are is going to be interesting to see because, like I said, they've got a lot of those players are on loan. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do in the summer. But I think they will get better next season.
Yeah, I think that last point you made is actually quite an important one. There's an awful lot of my friend John Litster, who is doyen of Scottish football historians, does the most phenomenal work in actually tracking. He's got a database of everybody who's played in Scottish football going back to the start, right? Which he will sell to people for on Memory 6 for a very modest amount of money. But he comes up, he lives in England, but he comes up and goes to museum and keeps up to date with the current figures. And he made the point to me when I met him recently that the number of loan players has increased massively. So there's not Scottish kids coming through. So again, going back to one of the points we made earlier about youngsters getting the chance, because success is demanded. And success might be avoiding relegation as well as finishing in European places. So it makes it so much harder. And I don't know the figures, but when you talked about Hibs, we've certainly got some loan players. Everybody's got loan players, and it creates this, not disunity, because obviously the players are professionals and by and large do their best, but it creates an issue, I think, in Scottish football for the future. You haven't got the chance of coming through as a young player because it's easier to go and get a loan player. And in actual fact, if you don't get a loan player, particularly when you've got this slightly concerning tie with English clubs where they're almost, starting to use this as feeder. You've got Dundee with Burnley. You've obviously got the Bournemouth situation. Is that good for Scottish football? I don't know. What do you think?
No, probably. I would like to see more young players getting a chance. Like, we've got a few young players at Hearts, like I said before, Macaulay Tate, Aidan Denham. I would like to see more young players getting a chance, but it doesn't happen because I think the money involved for certain clubs that want to get that top six or challenge for promotion and stuff, it just doesn't happen. And it's a shame. And I've said it before as well. I've said this numerous times. Getting rid of the reserve league was the worst thing that could have happened because I loved that reserve league. And now it's the B teams and stuff. And we've seen the other day as well, Bucky Thistle now can't get up.
Oh.
They had that statement that they made basically saying that, the SFA basically said you can't get promoted, which I think is a shambles. You've worked that hard. Bucky Thistle players have worked that hard to try and get promoted. And then at the very last minute, they're getting told, you can't play in that pyramid. Honestly, I think it's an absolute shambles how that's all worked out.
I think that's well worth having a wee discussion about, because again, you're talking at the start about the Football Supporters Association. If anybody goes onto our website, our chairman, Andy Smith, who has played Highland League, has a very impressive rant. And Andy is not slow about coming forward with his opinions about stuff. And he absolutely lays into the SFA on this one. And it's interesting that obviously Bucky are looking about this going to arbitration. They're producing stuff. I think this one's got a bit further to run. Normally what happens in Scottish football is that pressure is put on people to actually sort of just let this thing, die in the long grass, if I can mix my metaphors. But I hope it doesn't, because Bucky deserved the chance and they're not getting it. And it's just wrong. Just wrong. And I would seriously encourage you, if you're watching this, go on SFA, ScottishFSA.org. If you read Andy's blog, it's called This Thing. It's an absolutely brilliant rant about how Bucky are really being very, very badly treated. And I don't know any decent fan who thinks that that's not the case. And it comes back to this thing about, actually, you know what? Who's this game for? It's a business. They're limited companies, most of them. Some are fan-owned. But the customers are the fans, and they are being totally shafted here. It's just wrong.
I mean, I feel sorry for Bucky Thistle. I think I said this on the show the other day as well. I feel really sorry for Bucky. All the work they've put in, I saw their statement, and then saw the SFA statement, which, again, I just think it's an absolute shambles the way it's all been dealt with. And, I think Bucky probably should take this all the way, and I think they will. But it's just, it shouldn't happen that way. They've worked so hard. The fans have travelled across, wherever they have to go, all these places, and it's just, they've been treated very, very poorly.
Yeah, I said I don't think anybody could disagree with that. Different subject. We haven't mentioned this, but obviously we've mentioned Dundee United a few times in passing. But Friday night they got promotion. I don't know if you watched it or not. Did you?
Yeah, I was going to come on to that actually. I mean, it was kind of talked about last week. They were coming up anyway, but fair play to them. They've had a very good season. I know the United fans, a lot of them are not overly convinced by Jim Goodwin, but he's got them up. There'll be a Dundee Derby next season, which is great. Can they sustain that? Can they stay up? They probably can, but they're gonna have to spend. They're gonna have to spend money. But it's a brilliant. They've done well to come up, but I still think there could be another twist in this championship race yet, because I still believe that Wraith Rovers could still come up through the playoff.
Well, if they're playing us, they will. So the United thing is interesting. I mean, you mentioned the fact they've got to spend money, bearing in mind that they've just had humongous losses, And while, as I said, I don't have a problem. Any business can run at a loss for a certain period of time, so long as it's got a plan to make that up. But if it's buying success and then it eventually goes bust, which we've seen happen in the past with clubs, that's not right either. and it's not fair on the other clubs. So I don't know the answer to this, but I kind of get the thinking behind the financial fair play in England. We're not at that stage, but United they should have won that league. They did win that league because they've got more money than everybody else. That's why Celtic and Rangers win the league, the top league, because they've got more than everybody else. I did think Airdrie should have won the game. I thought they were the better team by some way. The United keeper made some fabulous saves. Again, I've seen on social media a lot of Dundee United fans are really not happy about their fans' behaviour afterwards with the fighting and the flares. And I actually switched it off before I saw the guys on the pitch and I thought, this is not great. And I just switched it off, wasn't bothered. I enjoyed watching the game, to be fair. And then I found out the next day there was fighting again. And that's the kind of thing which is slowly creeping back into our game, do you think? We're getting more anecdotes to the SFSA about it.
Yeah, I think there probably is, to be honest. We do have a few minutes. We've got a few minutes left on the show. I just want to give another shout out as well to our show on the 6th of May. If I don't say this again, Michael O'Barton. So the 6th of May, there is a special show at 7 o'clock till 8. It is a Monday night, and it's all about the work that is getting done by the Scottish Football Supporters Association. So tune in for that, 6th of May. Put it in your diary, 7 o'clock till 8. But before we go, and Celtic have won by 2-1 by the way against Dundee, so a big 3 points for Celtic. But before we do go, I just want to touch on something that Alistair mentioned earlier. Now we do have a few minutes, so I just want to touch on this because you are right. In Sweden, they are basically going to scrap VAR. Now, I know a lot of folk in Scotland have said do it here as well. Now, I know that you put out a thing earlier on as well on the SFSA website. It's been put on there as well about this, about getting VAR scrapped. I mean, do you really think there's a realistic chance that could happen in Scotland?
Well, I've written a piece which is going to go out next week, but I wrote one which you've maybe seen by the sound of it, which basically saying, is it time to get rid of it? It could happen. The way it could happen is quite simple. In Sweden, it's the fans who've actually made it quite clear at the clubs they don't want it. If the fans were organised, and I'm not suggesting that it's not the SFSA's place to organise the fans, I don't think that would be right, to be honest, but though some of my other board members might disagree, but I don't think it'd be right. But if the fans actually say, look, we're not buying our seasons until you change this, the clubs would do it tomorrow, like that, because they would be so scared. That's not going to happen. However, if we actually said, look, everybody hates this. My cousin in Argentina was talking to him about the Boca River game, where there was a massively controversial incident. These other countries are exactly the same as us. Fans really do not like VAR. It's a very small percentage who do. We could do with a proper external review. The argument, which I've always put forward myself, is that the referees need it. Otherwise, they don't get European games. I'm sorry, that fox has been shot, because how many Scottish referees are going to the Euros?
None.
Sweden's got a referee going, and they haven't got VAR. So don't tell me that you can't have referees doing European stuff without VAR. If we can create enough, and we'll run a poll, so which we'll go and promote through social media. If we can get enough fuss and interest in the media interested in it, again, the media have got they really don't want to get rid of VAR because they like it, I think. But fan pressure could get rid of it. It would be great if they could, but it's a long shot. But it doesn't mean it's not worthwhile at least having that debate in the open, not with the vested interests of the SFA and the referees associations running it, because otherwise it'll be a fait accompli. It'll be what they want it to be, but with the main stakeholders in this game, which is the fans, having their say, then at least we've got a chance of actually having a proper debate, and then it's up to the authorities.
I would actually love to even ask a referee, did referees even want VAR when it came in?
I've got a friend who does the training for Edinburgh referees, which is quite a decent job. Referees they can't say publicly what they think, but a lot of them, referee with 50 years experience living in Australia, somebody I know on Facebook, he looked at the commentary Man United thing and went, right, that's it, the game's over. Referees are football fans. They're not daft, We're just doing a survey of the SFSA. I don't know if we've got time for this, Graham, but I mean, it's not finished yet. We're asking lower division fans, would you like your club to be promoted with, to VAR? I'm not telling you any trade secrets. It's not quite finished yet, but unless there's a massive surge in favour of it, the vast majority say that's one of the things that puts them off promotion. They say they much prefer watching games without VAR in the lower divisions. I don't know many people who don't.
Yeah, that's very, very true. Our time is up. That's been a very, very quick 2 hours. We will be doing a very special show. Again, listen out for that about VAR. We will have an ex-referee coming on the show at some point, so look out for that one as well. Thank you, as always, to Alistair for joining me. It's been a very, very busy Sunday. We are back next Friday at the same time of 5 till 7. Thank you for all your comments. Thank you for the likes and everything. It's much appreciated. And we shall catch you another day. Have a great week, everyone. And we'll catch you later. See you, folks.
Thanks, folks. Cheers.